Welcome back to our podcast, everyone. Today, we're thrilled to have Carrie Berk. Carrie already has a life's worth of accomplishments under her belt. It's no wonder Bella magazine declared her an ambitious and dedicated boss babe, and the Wall Street Journal dubbed her a community-minded young creator. She's a verified content creator across several social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and Pinterest, with a monthly engagement of more than 100 million. A journalism major in college, Carrie is currently a reporter contributing writer for HuffPost, Newsweek, The Daily Dot, and others, on topics ranging from beauty and style to celebrity and sports. She has served as an on-camera correspondent for Tiger Bell and Girls Life, covering red carpet arrivals and interviewing celebrities at the radio, Disney Music Awards, New York Fashion Week, and the Teen Choice Awards. She's contributed to 17 magazine and Girls Life print and digital channels. She's acted on two Brat TV series, Stage Fright and Crown Lake, and she's a best-selling author on children's book author with 21 books to her credit. She penned her first book, Peace, Love, and Cupcakes, in 2012, the Cupcake Club series, and went on to publish 12 books, which she sold 300,000 copies worldwide. It became a award-winning off-Broadway show and featured section in 2017 New York Music Festival. Her second book, Fashion Academy, seems with her passion for fashion. The six-book series also came in off-Broadway production at Vital Theater and currently licensed worldwide by Conceit Music Production. In today's episode, me and Carrie will be discussing her new books, acting, and so much more. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us on Talkoffame today. I love everything you're doing, and it's crazy how much you literally have grown over a couple years. And especially growing up in New York, there's so much connections.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Same here. So, of course, you grew up in Manhattan. You still live in Manhattan, which is crazy. One of my favorite places ever. Like, what is it like? What was it like for you to grow up there?
Growing up in Manhattan was such a blast. I feel like it's all I know. When I tell people what it was like growing up in Manhattan, they, for some reason, think it's crazy. And I'm like, I'm so lucky. This is what I know and I love so much. But yeah, growing up in Manhattan, obviously, New York is filled with the hustle and bustle and chaos, kind of like what you see on like Gossip Girl on the Upper East Side. That was a little bit of like the life that I lived as a high schooler, which was pretty cool. But what I love so much about New York is the diversity, the diverse people you'll find, the diverse opinions, and it's just rich with culture. There's constantly new activities to explore, new restaurants opening. So that's probably what I love most. It's just constant exploration and constant reinvention of who you are with New York as your backdrop.
For sure. Like, I don't know why, but a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, New York is full of chaos based off like things they see on the news or social media. But sometimes it's not like that for people that live there, maybe their whole life or recently. But I'm from Pennsylvania, so it's 2 hours from New York from what part I am. And of course, many people know I basically like visit her so often more than my own home. And with New York, every time I go to New York, it's more like a dreamland and calm more than chaos. Even though it's called a place that never sleeps, it's true. It's a valid, statement. But everything with New York is not always chaos and craziness. It can be like a Gossip Girl like a type of thing, it can be calm and fun, and to live in that dreamland, is amazing. I plan on moving to New York in a couple of years, so who knows how it's going to work out with that. But New York is not always a place where it's usually chaos and crazy.
For sure, yeah. I think you find your pockets of peace in wherever you live. It's a little more difficult in New York because it is so chaotic,
Yeah.
but you find your places and you find your moments. Like Gossip Girl is known for the steps of the Met Museum. I love going to the Met. It's a really beautiful place to unwind. Uh,
Hmm.
just like going to an exercise class in New York is a
Hmm.
really cool place for me to get away and kind of escape from everything. So you do find your places and you find your pockets of peace amidst the chaos of New York.
Yeah, and there's honestly so many things you can do in New York. Like if you're looking for something to do, there's so many options that you literally it's hard to choose what to actually do during that time.
Definitely. And things are constantly being added. And like I said, new restaurants, new museums, new art galleries. There's always something new to explore. You never get bored living in New York.
Which is insane. That is honestly the best part about New York is that you never run out of options to do. Like there's so many things opening every month that it's like, oh, wish I actually tried today because no one you can't know or visit everything in New York because there's so many options.
Yeah, that's why I've been living here for 21 years and I feel like I'm still learning new things about New York and exploring new neighborhoods, which is always very exciting.
I know. Like honestly, with how many times I went to New York, there's honestly things I never know about, even though there's so much. I might not be or known as much as you since you lived there your whole life, but it's like it's insane. Like with the history and the things that I have there and the celebrities in New York City, the filmings, the shows there is there's so much to it. Like not just, the art galleries, but there's with the filmings and stuff, it's insane.
I actually rarely see people filming on the street. I know when I was younger, my mom would tell me Gossip Girl was filming on the street, and that was really fun to see, but I was young, I didn't know what that was. So I rarely see, actors on the street these days. Sometimes you see like a poster on a pole saying, this is filming on this street, but not so much. I feel like I more so run into celebrities when I'm in LA. New York for me is a little bit grittier. Like everyone's kind of, on the same page, just like walking around, exploring, being tourists in their own city. It's not as like glitz and glamour as one might presume.
And of course with LA, like it's city, there's like so many outskirts. Like there's more people, like more tourists in New York City than there is in Los Angeles. So it's more like you see more people out and about in Los Angeles than there is in New York. So it's much easier, but you do not know. It's hard to spot people, especially like celebrities in New York City, because how much people there are actually in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I very rarely have seen a celebrity in New York, maybe at an event or like a place where celebrities are meant to attend. New York Fashion Week, there's definitely more stars you'll find in the city. But on the day-to-day basis, not really. I feel like everyone's just on the same page, exploring the city and making it their own.
Exactly. And of course, you started everything. Like as you're growing up, you like did a bunch of things, but like how did you like get your start as a journalist and everything you're doing?
So I started writing when I was 8. I was learning about realistic fiction in school, and something about writing just really interested me. This idea of placing, real life themes in fictional scenarios. So I started off with this idea of realistic fiction, and that is really what intrigued me about writing. And that's what sparked my first book series, The Cupcake Club. And over the years, as I've come into my own as a writer, I've really honed in on the type of writing that I like to do. I'm a journalist at heart. I love interviewing people, telling their stories. I love, sports reporting, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, just looking at the world from a unique lens and helping people see it in a different way. And as well as writing memoir, I think is really important style for me, talking from my own personal experience. I'm very fortunate that I have this large social media platform that gives me the place to talk about important issues and for it to get the traction
Mhm.
that it needs in a way that someone might not necessarily have with a larger platform. So I take that as an opportunity, and that's part of the reason why I think my latest book is so important because I want to project these themes of falling in love and heartbreak and anxiety, themes that resonate with young adults so much. I'm in this unique position that I get to project it on this large platform to people so that it resonates with them.
Yeah, that's honestly which I love about authors is that they write whatever they want, and especially at a young age, you started writing different books. Like you literally wrote like over 20 books. in such like in under like probably like 10 years, which is insane. That's something that I personally cannot do. But you literally wrote like serious memoirs, like you basically wrote everything that people can think of. But especially with your newest book that you came out with, that we'll be talking about in a bit, but it's something that a lot of people deal with to this day, and I personally have dealt with personally. And it's something that I know a lot of people, especially young girls, deal with, especially nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. So my real life rom-com, I started writing this unofficially after my first breakup when I was 16 because I was heartbroken, and a form of self-therapy was really writing this book for me. So I just started writing down everything I remembered about the relationship, trying to make sense of it all. And it was a diary entry that I just put away. And I told myself that if I ever needed a reminder that there is love out there, I would look at it. I looked at it when I was 18 because I was very lonely in quarantine. And reading that diary entry all over again really sparked me to continue writing about my experiences because I realized, there's a lot of situations that I've gone through and dates I've been on where I didn't get closure. And a lot of other people could relate to that as well. So I started writing everything down that I could remember and soon realized it was more than just a form of self therapy. I mean, there's the first book out there that's really by a teenager for teenagers
Mhm,
about love and dating and relationships. It is the Gen Z Sex in the City.
mhm,
So I just kept, writing every dating experience I went on that was kind of a failed experience. I wrote it down and it helped me make sense of it all while also I knew it was going to help other people. And that's how rom-com came about. And it all comes to a head at the end of the book in chapter 14 called The Journey to Self-Love, when
mhm,
I go through my first anxiety attack and I realized that I'd been chasing love outwards this whole time when really I needed to be working on myself and practicing self love. And once I started to practice self love, that's when I really felt prepared to take on the dating scene in a new light.
mhm. And to really go to an approach is so much healthier than just not realizing and having anxiety attacks and realizing like love, like your love life is not your whole life. Like self-love is something that, a lot of people need to realize when going from relationship to relationship is that relationships is not your whole life. I know a lot of people sometimes think that, oh my gosh, I just got broken up with. I need to find someone else to date with so I don't be lonely. But that's not always case, like, you need to love yourself before you, be with someone because who knows what's making you lonely, yourself or just being with someone else that doesn't love you for who you are. And that is something that you really explained in your book is that, like, you really loved yourself even after dealing with a breakup at such, like, a young age and trying to navigate that through your teen years is something that I know not a lot of people deal with because I know, like, people think, "Oh my gosh, I'm a teenager. I should be dating, going out with guys, going on dates, doing stupid things." I'm just like, what is up with that now? Like, it's like not everything's about relationships. It's something that I'm still trying to process at some points. I need to tell myself, like, okay, like, do I want to live a life or do I want to live my life on relationships that it's probably not going to last long?
I think to a teenager, it's easy to feel like relationships are everything.
Hmm.
Hormones are high, you're going through all these big growth changes and you're exploring relationships for the first time. And I think that's totally valid. And I think teens have the right to explore their sexuality, explore their relationship preferences, and really learn who they are. I mean, this is the time to do it. This is the time to experiment. And my real life rom-com shows that it's not all going to be perfect. I mean, you're going to fall down, you're going to make mistakes, but this is the time to do it because after every situation, after every one of these chapters, I come to this conclusion where I realize that this was not the man for me, but here's what I learned. And here's what you can learn from this situation. And yes, it all starts with self love, loving yourself, and loving yourself through your mistakes. I mean, we almost hear it as a cliche these days that you can't love others until you love yourself. But self love is loving your flaws, it's loving your anxiety, it's loving the parts of yourself that aren't necessarily so pretty. Self-love is more than just, giving yourself a facial or a nice bath at home. It's kind of more wholesome than that, although that is an important part of it too.
No, so well said. Like, of course, every relationship that you are in is a learning experience. Like, not everyone is not gonna learn everything just on one relationship. Every relationship is different from others. Like, of course, there's definitely similarities, but every person that you date is definitely a learning experience. For some, especially a teenager, you're literally learning different in and out relationships and growing up. Teenagers are made to be mistakes, or not mistakes, but that's is a big part of being a teenager is that you're gonna make mistakes that you wouldn't have made when you're younger because that's a part of life. Like that's a time where you learn and really make mistakes. So when you're an adult, you will learn not to make those mistakes when you're older.
Yeah, I think we see all these rom-coms out there that might be a little misleading because every single one has a happily ever after and they're highly romanticized, which I can relate to a lot. I'm a hopeless romantic. Every
Mhm.
single one of these dates I went on, I immediately was thinking forward, can this work out? Can this turn into a relationship? And just romanticizing the hell out of each date, talking about how they sweep me off my feet and the magical lights and all this. You'll read that part of the book as well. But at the same time, a rom com is more than that. It might
Mhm.
not necessarily have a happy ending. A real life rom com, my real life rom com, is when you realize that you're going to make mistakes and when you realize that a real relationship is founded upon your imperfections and loving each other for your flaws. It's not just a surface level love, it's not just adrenaline. It's finding someone who you can have real conversations with. It's accepting the fact that you might disagree sometimes. It's accepting the fact that you have to love yourself before you can love the other person. So that's the conclusion we get to at the end of the book, realizing that a rom com is more than just what we see in the movies.
That is so well said. Like, of course, you did some acting work as well, on some brat projects. But has any of those movies that you watched or even shows really impacted, the way you act or the way you saw things?
I mean, of course, Sex in the City has a huge impact on me. I was named after Carrie Bradshaw, so it's kind of in my blood. So, yeah, I think a lot of the ways I look at relationships are similar to Carrie in that we romanticize things and also we kind of go into relationships blindly without looking and often like take the leap, even if it's not good for us. That's something that I did time and time again, and I saw Carrie doing the same things. But you write your own story, you write your own rom com. So, although I do have similarities to Carrie, that conclusion I reach at the end of the book is that, it's more than just going into a relationship blindly. You got to really think about yourself and work on yourself before you can give yourself to someone else. And I'm very grateful that I did the work, and a big part of that was working on my mental health and learning how to deal with my anxiety because once I started working on myself, that's when I was able to really find love.
I honestly was the same way. Like the more that I grew up, the more I realized that not everyone that I am with is going to make me satisfied with myself. Like the person that will make you more satisfied is yourself because you can't rely on people to make you happy. Because that is not healthy. Because of course they're just going to play with your emotions, and then you're not going to be happy when that person's not talking to you anymore. If that happens, that's not always going to happen, but sometimes it does. And with having that self love and watching those TV shows that you absolutely love, and of course have something in common with, whether it's like your comfort character or comfort show, everyone has something that they absolutely find comfort in when they're upset or having a bad day or just, want to settle down, just relax and want to watch something funny or something that they absolutely love. And like Sex in the City, that is something that is absolutely iconic, like one of the iconic shows that absolutely or movies I absolutely love. It's such an amazing movie. I don't know why I keep calling it show for some reason. Like there's a
It is
movie.
a show. Sex
It's a
and the City is
show.
a
I know
show.
there's a movie version than a show version, but it definitely is something that is a very good comfort thing to watch.
Yeah, I think it's very relatable, and that's why it's resonated with me a lot. I think a lot of these situations and dates that are showcased on the show are funny, sometimes a bit dramatized, but they're relatable and they kind of normalize the fact that the dating world, especially in New York City, is not perfect.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a little bit
true.
funky and it's fun and it's also sucks at times. But when you find your person, you find your person. And the girls on the show had a little bit of a hard time with that, but
Mhm.
maybe, the modern Sex in the City that I'm writing here is that when you do the work on yourself, that's when you really find love. The girls on the show didn't really do the work on themselves. You don't show them going through mental health struggles really at all, but that's the reality of the world we're living in, especially this generation that I'm writing for, Gen Z. I mean, we're in a mental health crisis. The reality is, as we're exploring relationships for this first time, we're also dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Suicide is one of the leading causes of death among young adults. This is a serious issue, and it's something we need to acknowledge. We can't ignore the fact that even as we're exploring relationships, we still have to be working on ourselves. And when you put the work in, like that's when you're gonna start seeing real progress in all other areas of your life and not just dating. I mean, in career, in fitness, and whatever you're passionate about. When you do the work on yourself, it's always going to project outwards into other areas of your life.
And with like mental health, that is something that like a lot of Gen Z people are seriously fighting nowadays, especially with the pandemic. We weren't doing things as much as we were, we were stuck in our homes, like we didn't know necessarily what was happening. And that was something that really affected a lot of people, not just kids, but also adults. Because of course we were trying to navigate our new life in 2020, of course, because that was really one the toughest time for everyone was during the pandemic. Like we didn't know what to do. Like, of course, we're so used to living life, 24/7, being busy, maybe going to school or going to work or other things that you do outside those things that you just don't know what to do with ourselves. And that really hurt a lot of people and affected them so much. With at home, you literally just sat there and did nothing and trying to find yourself to do. But it was very hard not being able to live life at the same exact time as you were.
Absolutely. It was a really difficult time for everyone, particularly Gen Z, because most of that generation, let's say, was class of 2020. You didn't get a prom or a graduation. I was really kind of left high and dry. I didn't get to say goodbye to friends.
Yeah.
And I was isolated. I was isolated at my beach house with my family for a year. I didn't get to see any friends. There was no rendezvous with boys. There's none of that. So I was forced to look inwards and do that work on myself. I always say, I have anxious tendencies. Like I've had anxiety since I was a little girl,
Mhm.
but I really was forced to confront it, I think, during the pandemic when life was happening and I was in school and everything was exciting. It's kind of easy to put your mental health on the back burner, but the
Yeah.
pandemic caused so many of us to look inwards. So it's a blessing and a curse because it's hard to deal with, but also in the long run, when you do that work on yourself, it's going to serve you better.
For sure. You said it very well. Of course, to kind of the last thing really you want to talk about with you is your new book called My Real Life Long Com, How to Build Self-Confidence and Write Your Own Relationship Rules. But like, of course, you said it's a bit earlier, but what was kind of like your dating life like for you growing up in, of course, New York City? And with having such a big population, it's such a hard to find that sort of person.
Yeah, I mean, it's varied. There's definitely unique characters in New York. I also had very unique experiences because I was a social media influencer. I am a
Mhm.
social media influencer. So I was dating around in the social media world too.
Yeah.
And that whole TikTok boy persona. is
Mm.
something that we've all seen online. And I was experiencing that firsthand from a dating standpoint. So I talk about that a lot in the book. But it was just complex, chaotic, exciting. Um, I think a lot of the times, I touched on this earlier, I was going into it blindly because it was just all so exciting, especially in the social media world. You know, you had a TikTok boy who wanted to film a video with you and was interested in you romantically. Like there was a sense of excitement surrounding that, but
Yeah.
also you don't realize that these are people who are solely focused on themselves. They're not interested in relationships. They're not interested in getting to know you on a deeper level. And it took me some time to realize that. But each experience I went through, I learned something more about myself. I learned that I want someone who's emotionally intelligent and someone who's able to hold a conversation and wants to get to know me on a deeper level. I learned that I want someone who's at a similar stage in life as me and is driven and passionate about something. I talk about an experience in the book where I was 18 and I went on a date with someone who was, I think, 29. And it was just very uncomfortable because this was someone at a completely different stage of life.
Hmm.
I learned I had some interaction with my best friend's ex-boyfriend. I learned that sisters always come before misters, not to be cliche, but your best friends always come first. There are a lot of different things I think I learned along this journey. And like I said, this started off as self therapy. I was talking through it with myself in the form of diary entries. But the more I wrote, the more I realized this would resonate with other people. And these are themes that everyone needs to hear to feel like they're not alone in their dating journeys.
Like, I love that you really realize that as time went on. So of course, as an influencer, every influencer is different in dating life. Of course, if you're maybe going out with or going on a date with an influencer, doing a collaboration, sometimes a lot of people think like, "Oh my gosh, am I going with them romantically?" Even though we're just making content or something. Because when you're doing collaborations with other creators, sometimes you're like, "Oh my gosh, is this gonna last? Like, let's see how this goes." But some influencers usually just want to make content rather than getting to know you personally, rather than professionally. That's how a lot of people approach it. Even though a lot of people set high expectations, thinking like, "Oh my gosh, like I just want this guy's attractive, like I want to know him outside of this," but that person might just think like, "Oh my gosh, I just want to work with professionally rather than getting to know you." Like it's some like there's a lot of people like that, even though sometimes television can set that standards a lot with influencers and celebrities thinking, "Oh my gosh, am I getting to know this person?" But rather than them just being cocky and just work with them for maybe a day or two, then not talking to them ever again, which is, it's like a standard that a lot of people, can't stand. Is that like with having this standard and being an influencer, you want to know everyone professionally and personally, but sometimes people don't want to be with that rather than just professionally.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many TikTok relationships
Mm.
exposed on our For You page, people who are only in it for a business interaction and not genuine relationships. And that's just setting a poor standard for the rest of the world. I'm
Mhm.
very lucky that I didn't fall too deep into that trap, but I've seen it firsthand. I've seen friends go through it, and I think it's setting a really poor example. And I'm the first to admit if I make a mistake when it comes to relationships. And you'll see in this book whenever I go through an experience with a TikTok boy, in the end, I realize that this person is almost always just in it for their own gain, whether it
Exactly.
is a business gain or just a normal boy wanting to get in your pants. You know, it's always
Exactly.
something else.
Like, those are honestly two of the things that a lot of guys, I personally see is that they just want to get in your pants or they just want to be with you for personal followers or personal gain or whatever it is. Like, that is something that I see very often with people is that, like, they'll use you for money or followers or they just want to get, well, usually using getting your pants. Like, that's the two most things that a lot of people see.
Yeah, when I stopped dating TikTok boys, I would never mention my TikTok on my dating profile because I wanted people to get to know me for me outside of my social media. I was always very hesitant to give out my Instagram. I would only like give out my number. I didn't want to give out my Snapchat because I have a verified Snapchat. So to me, what was most important when I was like on the dating scene was someone who wanted to get to know me for me and actually level with me and get to know me beyond like what's shown on my social media.
And like that is honestly, I'm on the same boat. Because whenever like I'm talking to somebody or hanging out with somebody, I barely mention that I do podcasts or whatever. I do because once I mention it to someone, they're like, "Oh, what celebrities do you know? Like who? What people do you know?" I'm just like, here we go again. That's why I don't like to mention that because that's like sometimes a lot of people mention when you bring things like that up. It's like, oh, how many followers do you have? Or how many people do you know? Who did you meet? Like that is something that sometimes I see, and I'm sure you see as well, is that like that is a big reason why I barely mention what I do until I get to know you better, is that like I hate when people just ask me questions like that. Like I don't care saying who I know. I don't care telling people that what I do. It's that's just a big reason that I don't bring that up to people. Unless it's like someone I'm close with, is that like that's when people hear those things, they're like, oh, like I want to know this person. Can you hook me up with that? Or who are you friends with this person? Like that is honestly a big thing if you're a celebrity or an influencer is the
Yeah.
question.
I tell a story in my book about how I was on a date with someone and the guy realized I was an influencer and asked me for Addison Rae's phone number on our
Oh
date.
my gosh,
And I
really?
sent him home. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. That is
Very awkward.
I'd also be like, I'm leaving. Bye. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Very awkward.
I think ask her yourself. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, unless you know personally, then that's a different story. But I think that's honestly a big the best part to wrap this episode. I hope everyone enjoy this episode. I literally loved having Carrie on today's episode. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I definitely want to do a part two. I'm definitely buying her book because that's something I definitely think I would enjoy. And of course, I think there's gonna be a bunch of juicy stories in there that I think I would die for, honestly. But I
Right.
really appreciate you so much for coming on and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much.